welcome to our Morning Throners podcast. I'm Nelson.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kyle, and we're the fucking Morning Throners.
And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Song of Ice and Fire podcast. We're the Morning Throners. Tyrion 14 on deck. Got a lot of action, a lot of blood coming your way. Tyrion just shooting his way up the frag count.
It's literally beginning to end action, right?
Yeah, I mean, these are...
We haven't had a chapter like this ever, maybe, except for maybe the last Tyrion battle.
Which we got lucky because George has a fucking habit of he should have just skipped to Tyrion sitting with Cersei or something in the Queen's room.
Post-war.
It was crazy out there. And that the chapter.
They just recap it. I feel like that's true, Kyle. We do get a lot of recap, not a lot of firsthand account.
It's like, damn it, man. Show it.
Sometimes just battle can be boring, though.
I know.
And it's more interesting to show it in different ways, show it from Sansa's perspective or whatever.
Well, yeah, there's no substance, right? Other than the battle, there's no story. It's just him going off for 8 pages, and then at the end is the twist.
Yeah, it's one of the things the way we're reading this makes it even worse. Kyle's been reading for a month and a half. He's been reading the same day, all literally chapters from the same day for a month and a half, just from different people's perspectives.
It's worse.
And half of them have been from kind of like we're saying, in a room with Cersei, not out in the battle. Half of those
not even here
are Sansa in the room. Yeah, so not that I like those chapters, but yeah, it's I feel like these chapters are kind of better if you're bang 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 bang, reading them on the heels of each other.
Well, it's a kind of a slow one, and then a boom in your face, oh shit, this is going on, and then what's Sansa doing with Cersei?
Don't get me wrong, this one was cool, and I kind of understand. I can kind of give credence to the way George tried to explain it away, but this one I had a hard time believing it at points.
For sure,
still Tyrion, right?
He's tossing people off the ship and shit, and
yeah, he's just fucking people up, just ripping through everybody. And like I said, George tried to explain it with the bloodlust or blood drunk or whatever he called it, but it's still Tyrion, right?
For sure. The one thing that I agree with you, Kyle, is when he's I'm leading this charge, and they're just running from me. He makes it seem like sometimes he's by himself and the people are just running away from him, and they're probably actually running from whatever host is behind him, and not Tyrion the half-man. So
at the beginning, you're right. But then he does split up from everybody pretty much. After that initial charge, it sounds like there's kind of chaos.
For sure.
And it's just kind of people fighting individual battles everywhere, and he rides off somewhere else, down further because he sees this bridge.
Right.
There's another part kind of like what Jeff was saying at the end when he's on the bridge of ships, when he's like I was just killing people left and right on this bridge, and they were running from me, and he's and Mandan and Bale and Swam were behind me the whole time. It's well, Tyrion, maybe they were running from the 2 Kingsguard, not the little kid,
not the half man that maybe was swinging his dagger around. How much of it was actually
he had half a spear, he didn't even have a dagger.
It was a broken or broken spear. Yeah,
exactly. So,
and
I think it's a little bit of both. I agree with what you're saying.
Did he exaggerate a little bit of what he was doing?
There's definitely a point in the middle where he's just going off, and I'm come on, okay, you're pretty much a handicapped person out here, competing in the midst of battle, and going off like Jamie would be.
Yeah. Well, and that was going to be my next point, and I mean, we can leave it kind of short too, is that he might not be telling the whole truth. I mean, you kind of hinted at that before, this could be Tyrion's version of the story. And I mean, from what we know about Tyrion, he's not afraid to kind of, weave a story.
Yeah, but normally, when we get their thoughts, we don't get embellishment there, and he's not doing a lot of talking here. Yeah. Again, it's not that the thoughts are always correct, but normally when the thoughts are incorrect, it's an honest thought. It's they actually think they're... So in order for me to believe what you're saying, Tyrion would have
Maybe Tyrion thinks that he really was... Yeah. It goes back to what you're talking about with on the bridge.
Exactly. I'm 100% with that.
The one thing I was curious about is if he was actually ever trained, right? He would have came out, once he was born, he's a dwarf, right? So they probably already were looking down on him. Not saying that he couldn't have been trained to fight and whatnot. He did a backflip, so I
don't think he was.
Right, so
I mean, he said that before. He didn't have a sword really, so he had to use his other weapon.
Yeah, use books.
Yeah, so it's just a little bit crazy. He's held an axe now twice, and both times
from horseback,
and he's really done well. Yeah.
again, maybe that's part of why he's doing so well, is because he's on horseback and none of the enemy is, right? There's no way really they have horses.
I think that's got to make it harder for him. Like, could you imagine balancing on a horse and trying to like fight your way through people with zero training?
Yeah, he's got to have some special stirrups for sure.
I feel like I've said this before, that like fighting on horseback would be hard.
I think the most part of it is the horse just like running over people until it gets stabbed and falls and kicks you off. Like that's the problem with. I feel like, and it's shown in movies all the time. Yeah,
because it's Tyrion, or did he not have his saddle? Or
he flies off his horse at the end, so he wasn't like latched in, but he has told Bran that he needs like a special saddle, pretty much just like Bran does, which is why he knew how to give him the saddle blueprints thing. So, but yeah,
I was just curious. Like, I mean, at some point maybe they gave him a little bit of training, but he's basically going out into these battles like, and he's talking strategy, which I guess he's read enough that he could like. I'm know okay what a game plan for a battle would be. Like, hey, let's spear up and shit like that. But
that's believable.
Yeah, he's just going off is awesome.
Yeah, so like we said in the last Tyrion chapter, like he thinks he's like the Stannis Tywin type soldier, where he's like in the back and commanding everything, and he can do that. Like he kind of starts off the chapter doing that with the wildfire explosion and everything.
Yeah.
But then by the end of that chapter, he's doing the Jaime position or like the Hound position, where you're just leading the charge and doing like the battle fury thing. And I also like how it's done it now with both and the Sansa chapter and this Tyrion chapter, where they pick up right on each other's heels, right? So Tyrion's like, let's lead this charge. I can't look back to even see if they're with me. And here he's like, they're leaving right out of the King's Gate. He can't see more than the slit through his helmet.
And he notices who, I mean, might as well get into it. He's spearing up and he can see the people right to his side. So Mandan's on his right. And Pod comes up on his left. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing, Pod? And
he's like, I gotta be here.
Good thing he was there.
Yeah.
Pod's 13. Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah, but it's like, I help you and you need help. So I'm here.
How much courage did Pod get from Tyrion? Like being like, all right, like I'll lead this motherfucker. And Pod's like, you know what? Damn right. You know, he's got to be one of the guys from the last chapter, like, that got stirred up. He probably was never going to fight until Tyrion was like, well, I guess I'm fighting too.
If I'm a half man. Yeah, if I'm a half man, what are all you guys? Yeah. The other thing Tyrion sees right when he runs out is there's a couple ships that have beached, right? Probably the ones that dropped off the ram. But he mentions there's one bigger than the rest that hasn't beached the shore, flinging barrels of pitch from catapults. I'm guessing this is Fury, right? It's the only ship we know of that has two catapults on its
own ship. About that.
Yeah, I don't know if it really matters. Just like Fury's there, which is probably upriver, right away from everything.
And the one Florent was leading Fury, right? The guy that.
Yep, Imri.
Yep. So they're spearing up. There's people at the King's Gate. I forget how many people he said, but there's enough holding this big ass ram, ramming the door, and that's where they set their charge. And the charge hits pretty quick.
He cut somebody's head in half, like immediately.
Yeah, just
it's like the first thing he does.
Yeah, he didn't miss his first swing. Good for him.
He's just like, yeah, man, Shagga would have laughed at me because like I'm fucked up after cutting this guy's head in half, but I still cut a guy's head in half.
Another funny part was like he's trying to see who he actually killed. Right? He's like, I killed somebody that had whatever on their sigil, but more or less now they're the helmless because he was able to just chop their head off.
Yeah, well, he goes for this guy because he's helmless. It's like a Florent, I think, because it's a fox and flowers he sees. And he's like, you know what? Right. The sigil doesn't matter. What matters is this guy's not wearing a helmet, swing for the head. And you guys said the result. One cool thing I thought, Jeff, kind of football-wise, when they're making this, he like gives a little insight of like how you form an arrowhead spear charge with like horses. And he's like, they're knee to knee. Just makes me thinking like field goal block.
Get instep to
instep. Yeah, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Anyone who's been a lineman knows what I'm talking about. Do they do that on punt? Will little guys know about that?
No, you need a little bit of a split for punt. Yeah.
So we've had this debate a ton of times, and we had this debate last chapter, and I knew the answer because I had already read this chapter. But the banner bearer, are you screwed with this banner?
Yeah, no, I wrote the note too. You're not screwed as a banner. And I think we said this too, right?
This has been one of the ideas tossed around. Yeah, we've had like 7
You need to have a spear. It'd be completely pointless, especially you're a good guy. So I'm glad that it's now confirmed that there's spears on top of the banner and
put it to rest. Finally.
If you're the drummer boy, your job sucks. That's for sure.
We got some resolution to this month's years long argument or discussion.
The people that were holding the ram quickly drop it and are either fighting now or fleeing. A lot of fighting and fleeing. I guess that's kind of, the wave of wars, right? You retreat until you can get back together and then charge again until you have enough. But
these ram guys probably have like swords on them, but they're probably not drawn if they're holding this ram.
Yeah, they just got jumped by a squad of horses.
Yeah, they're not ready. The other thing here is cool, like especially what we know by Mandan by the end of the chapter, there's like some cool description of him here. At the ram, his big red reared, but the black stallion leapt the obstacle smoothly, and Sir Mandan flashed past him, death in snow-white silk. His sword sheared off limbs, cracked heads, broke shields asunder. So he's talking about death because he's killing people right now, but he's also like the one that kind of comes for Tyrion at the end, right?
Yeah, a little preview, a little foreshadow.
It's not something I would have picked up.
Yeah,
that meant that, but I'll take it.
Yeah, it does say like he has dead eyes too at some point.
Yeah, it says he has dead eyes at the beginning. Mandan took the place to his right, flame shimmering against the white enamel of his armor, his dead eyes shining passionlessly through his helm.
Well, he's like always supposedly like been pretty good, right? Like he was. I remember him being top guy.
It kind of foreshadowed this, like even from the beginning of this book when Tyrion first shows up. He like Mandan's the one that doesn't let Tyrion in the room with Cersei. And we hear that Mandan's like from the Vale or something. So the way he gets in, he's like, "Oh, do you know Sir Vargas Eden?" He's like, "Oh, I know him. He's a good knight." And Bronn's like, knew him because Bronn, that's the guy that Bronn killed in the trial by combat for Tyrion.
Yeah.
So he kind of like flexes that muscle there when he first meets him. And in that meeting, he says, Jaime always told me that Mandan was the most dangerous of all the Kingsguard besides Jaime. I'm sure in that chapter, Jeff and I mentioned like, oh, Mandan and Tyrion are going to meet at the end of this book too. And like, he's the most dangerous one. He's dangerous to Tyrion. You know what I mean? So kind of foreshadowing like from all the way back then.
Yeah. I mean, he always seemed kind of weird, but I mean, I guess I should have. No, I shouldn't have, but I didn't see this coming, I guess is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
I didn't see him flipping, and he didn't give off any, but he doesn't really talk much either. So.
Exactly. Just kind of standing there.
Yeah.
So Tyrion hasn't jumped over the ram. They dropped the ram. He didn't jump over it. He's like looking around potentially for Pod. He mentions that he looks for Pod or he can't find Pod as he's
saw no sign of Pod. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
some arrows start flying his way.
He gets hit in the face, in the helmet by an arrow. And he's like, what the fuck am I doing? Time to go. Yeah. So he starts kicking his horse back into motion.
I mean, it's just a great point. Like, be a moving target, harder to hit.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be standing around.
So he notices, like, I think he fights more. He ends up jumping over the ram. He fights, and then I think he peers out over to, like, across the tourney ground or the beach, wherever they're at now, and there's a lot of fighting going on still.
Yeah, so you guys can see this. I think what's happened is he's come out near the tourney grounds, and he's like come south. I'll have the map up in the YouTube video right now. He comes out near the tourney grounds here, and then rides south towards the King's Gate, and that's where the ram is. And I think they kind of jump over and around this corner, or they come out south of the King's Gate and go north, and then do like a U-ing and come back. Either way, there's a point next where he's basically seeing like more fighting going on down here towards the Mudgate, which is to the right.
Did they cleared out all of this brush and obviously the fish market?
Exactly. This is all gone. It's just basically
burnt
so
land.
He's down here at the King's Gate and he sees more fighting at the River Gate and he thinks this is either Lancel or Balon Swan leading sorties. And they basically like start to he commands, let's go that way. And I think Mandan more echoes him like Mudgate. They all start riding. He yells King's Landing. People start yelling Half Man, and he's like, I wonder where they learned that. Because didn't he say that to him last time? He's like, if I'm a Half Man, what are you?
Yeah, but I mean, how would everybody else hear that? I think this is just what they call him, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's like an
insult. The Mallet Men have been hanging out for a while.
I don't know that it's an insult right now, though. I think it's like super.
Yeah.
Not now, but like in general, it is. Like that's how I think
it's coming out of it.
Yeah. I thought about this too, and I just think it's the clansmen who are hanging out with probably the people that are fighting now, and they'd be like, "Oh, we're no, I don't know if they're back, but they've been in the city for a while."
I totally forgot that they called him that.
As not as like disrespect, but that's kind of like
totally
his
forgot
nickname.
that. Good point, Jeff.
I thought he was like kind of thinking to himself like, those fucking clansmen are calling me Half Man around everybody, and that's why.
Wondering which one of them got to them. Yeah, like Shag. It was Shagger or whatever. I forget all the other names.
It's definitely Shagger.
Well, I think that's a cool callback too, because like this same thing again. I haven't read that chapter, the Green Fort chapter, in a while. But when he has that battle, and the last time he's with all the clansmen, right? Like he rides into battle at the Green Fort with all the clansmen. I wonder if they're shouting Half Man for him in that battle as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
A little parallel.
took a shot to the elbow, broke his elbow. So as he's riding through, he just realizes how much fire and shit's actually going on.
No wonder the Hound was scared.
Yeah, he's like, "Whoa, fuck!" I mean, I was calling him a pussy for being scared of fighting. And just imagine, like, I don't have like a fear of spiders or something like that, or like, just imagine if you do have that fear and it's surrounding you. I think of Ron Weasley in the forest with spiders, and it's his biggest fear. Like, what do you expect him to do?
Completely surrounded.
My biggest fear probably would have been like Michael Myers at some point. If there was 1,000 Michael Myers around me, I'd probably crawl up into a ball and die too.
I mean, you could have said like faced with one of them, but
one of them would have been enough. Imagine 1,000. Like,
okay.
I might have taken myself out. So
that's the point. Like, the Hound doesn't even like to be in a room with a candle, let alone like out here right now. His wedge was gone. Every man was his own battle now. I should have turned back, he thought, riding on. So he just keeps going, kind of like you're saying. Like, he knows this is stupid. He's scared, and he's just going on. This makes me think of what Ned told Bran. Like, the only time a man can be brave is when he's afraid.
Yeah.
Again, that kind of goes to the Hound too. Like, does that mean the Hound's not brave? I don't know. To Jeff's point, it's a kind of a bigger situation there.
He was out there too, though. Like, he already put some time in. Yeah. Like, I mean, he already put some work in. He's like, I'm fucking done, is what he's saying right now. Not like, I ain't going out there.
Yeah. And I think
it's also kind of like the Theon thing, right? Where he's like, man, I should have went with her. And he's sticking it out at Winterfell.
Yeah. What do you mean? Tyrion's like, I should have just turned back, and with who? The Hound?
Yeah, like, that was the safe route. That was the smart route, but I'm on this other path. And that's, like I said, that's what Theon's doing, right? Like, he's like, man, I should have went with Asha. Like, that's the smart, that is the safety. That is, like...
I think the opposite here, though. Like, if Tyrion didn't do this, I think things might go bad, right? Like, the ram breaks down the door and they take the city. You know what I mean?
I think it could go bad being out. It should go bad for him being out here.
Yeah.
And that's back to the beginning conversation where it's like, this shouldn't be going this well for Tyrion.
He shouldn't be that good at his second battle.
He shouldn't be untouched. He should be at least, like, a little hacked.
He does get hit with an arrow, which is great.
But it bounced off his helmet. Like, oh, you're right. No, in his shoulder. You're right.
Yeah. All right. So the next note I have is just his explanation of the battle fever, which I think is pretty cool to think about. Anyone that's been in a situation where, like, football is an obvious one. I think hockey is an obvious one where, like, you just start getting hit, and anytime that adrenaline comes up, you don't feel what's happening to you until a while after, right? Till that adrenaline dies down.
It's a thing, though, that where, like, I feel like Jamie could get that because he practiced, right? Like, part of that in football is, like, when your body, like, just takes over because you've practiced it so many times that you don't have to think about what you're doing. Your body just, like, kind of, like, knows it and feels it.
I think it's more or less like...
and like we said earlier, we don't know. But theoretically, Tyrion hasn't practiced this as much. So, I get, like, I don't know.
There's no way he's practicing this. 0% chance.
And I'm not saying I've, like, in a football game, people go on slow motion because I just, like, felt that good. But, like, there's some times where you just, like, everything. You've studied, like, their defense so well.
Well, that's a little bit different.
Like, prep goes into that, though.
Yeah. If you think of, like, how Mandon Moore and Balon are fighting right now, I completely agree. Like, that's what's going on to them. They've practiced this so much that they know how to, parry swings and whatnot. And Tyrion's just kind of out there hacking, but he's already been hit, right? That first arrow that glances off his head has got the adrenaline going so high that he's just in, like, full out fuck it mode where he ends up getting hit in the shoulder and doesn't feel it. That's just pure adrenaline of being in the fight.
Yeah, for sure. You want to read that quote, right? I have it as a quote. The war shrank to the size of his eye slit.
The war shrank to the size of his eye slit. Knights twice his size fled from him, or stood and died. They seemed little things and fearful. Lannister! He shouted, slaying. His arm was red to the elbow, glistening in the light of the river. When his horse reared again, he shook his axe at the stars and heard them call out, half man, half man. Tyrion felt drunk. The battle fever. He had never thought to experience it himself, though Jaime had told him of it often enough. How time seemed to blur and slow, and even stop. How the past and future vanished until there was nothing but the instant. How fear fled, and thought fled, and even your body. You don't feel your wounds then, or the ache in your back from the weight of the armor, or the sweat running down into your eyes. You stop feeling, you stop thinking, you stop being you. There is only the fight, the foe, this man, and then the next, and the next, and the next. And you know they are afraid and tired, but you're not. You're alive, and death is all around you, but their swords move so slowly you can dance through them laughing. Battle fever. I am half a man and drunk with slaughter. Let them kill me if they can.
Yeah. I think it's awesome.
There's no way he's this good.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I think a lot of it's...
Jeff hasn't seen Lord of the Rings. I think a little bit of this is a little bit of like a Lord of the Rings parallel to a dwarf from Lord of the Rings who also uses an axe and kind of just pops off.
Gimlet ball washer.
Exactly.
But yeah, so he's talking about like hacking down knights, right? Like these are knights. Like it's not just some random hire.
It's one other thing. Like if you're trying to figure out like, okay, let's really figure out any like plus that Tyrion has that could explain why he does so well. To your point, like a lot of it could be horse.
Small target.
And the people he's fighting are like not knights. They're like maybe like men at arms or archers. But like like you're saying, he says knights here. Like knights ran
fleeing. From him. There's some of them that are just like, fuck this. I'm not even gonna try.
This is my last football parallel too. Is when you think you had like such a great game, like man, I balled out. Like every play went my way. I did my thing. And then you go back and watch the film, and like lie. You didn't do that. The film it's never as good as it actually seems.
Tyrion's just like cowering at the base of the wall, and everybody's actually laughing half man at him, and like he shit his pants a while ago.
So exactly. Balon ends up coming next to him. It's not Mandan. As they continue to fight, Balon's like, "My lord, look." Does he call him my lord or your grace? I forget.
I have him killing a few more people. He spins in this while he's in this battle fever. He spins around this dude, cuts off his spearhead, then his hand, then his arm, and then there's this guy he sees in a puddle of black water, offering up like a gauntlet, like yielding to him. Basically, like the guy in the first battle. It wasn't a guy trying to yield to him in the first battle, or he was like saying "yield to me" to Tyrion before Tyrion killed him with the spike on his helmet. There was definitely a yield moment in the first one, but here this guy's offering up his gauntlet, saying "I yield," and then some wildfire explodes somewhere, lights everything up. The puddle isn't water; it's his own blood, and his hand is still in his gauntlet. Dude flings it back.
Snuck in there in the middle there, but this wildfire burst overhead. How did it burst overhead?
I'm thinking
if it doesn't,
an arrow.
Go ahead.
Hit it.
You think an arrow hit a jar?
Yep.
Do
you think there's a flame on this jar?
It's sparked on the arrow, and it's super combustible.
So that's what I'm saying. I think it's just it's self-igniting. But anyway, no. I didn't mean to get a whole way into that.
It could have been a flaming arrow because they were doing pitch too, right?
I might be wrong, but doesn't Tyrion tell him to when he's practicing with the green paint? The last step is practice lighting it before they throw it, or lighting the green paint,
like a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah, again, I said the reason for that before was so it explodes, so there's just a source nearby. Yeah, I think you still need an explosion
when it crashes.
Down just a little bit of fire enough.
Yeah,
I don't know. It seems so volatile that having a flaming part of the bottle would just not work. You know what I'm saying? Like it would just explode immediately.
I wouldn't want to be the guy lighting it, or the guy holding it when it gets lit.
Yeah. I don't want to be anywhere close.
So he gets this gloved. He's like, oh, it's a glove, and then he realizes the hand's in it. And he throws it back at the dude, right?
Yeah.
And then he kills him.
Fuck this.
Yeah.
Or somebody.
And then he realizes Balon's next to him, and he's like, my lord. He's all dirtied up, blood, mud, brain on his lance, and crazy stuff.
Face. Yeah.
He's like, check that out. And as they look up the river,
a lot of men were coming off this like broken galley that was crashed into a stone pier. But there were so many that Tyrion like realizes that they can't be coming from like one ship crashed here. And then he like looks back along. 20 galleys were jammed together out there, maybe more. It was hard to count. Their oars were crossed, their hulls locked together with grappling lines. They were impaled on each other's rams, tangled in a web of fallen rigging. One great hulk floated up between two smaller ships. Wrecks, but packed so closely it was possible to leap from one deck to another, so to cross the black water. And there was a bunch of them doing it. Tyrion says hundreds, and he even sees one dude trying to ride a horse across this thing.
Yeah, well, he called him
Tyrion's lied to us the rest of this chapter, so maybe it's not hundreds, but it would...
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that was their plan, right? Was to bring these boats up to ferry people across. So like,
why? Not like this though.
I know, but what I'm saying is like this is plan B
once
at
the
this
bridge,
point. Like,
the bridge presented itself. Let's get on and get over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, they probably are trying to stream across this, even though it's extremely unsafe. Obviously,
the one thing I'll say is up until reading it this time, because I've never really looked at the map of King's Landing too closely here. I've always assumed that like this bridge was caused by the chain, and like it was basically the stuff pushed up on the chain. But we know the chain is like way further down,
way further up. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just like a weird wedging of. I'm sure these stone docks, because we know there's a lot of stone docks there. You can see them on the map. Like, I'm sure that probably helps. But still, 20 galleys having to be wedged, which again explains like why this thing is so, when he's on it, is shifting and moving so much.
They literally just blew up like 40 to 60 boats all at once, right? In this tiny little area. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, because even ones that are sinking are probably now like making how, like we said, how shallow is this river? The ones that are sinking things are catching on those now. So. Pretty badass.
Yeah, so we get another great quote from Tyrion in his blood fever, battle fever. Those are brave men. Let's go kill them. Straight out of a movie.
I think in the TV show he throws that line at the end of the, "If I'm a half man, what the rest are you?" Yeah, those are brave men out there. Let's go kill. And then they just throw it all in one.
That's the battle cry.
Yeah,
good thing they didn't waste it.
Yeah.
So they obviously start attacking towards these ships.
Mandan shows back up at some point.
Yeah.
He's with them again.
Yep. And then Balon's horse ends up getting stabbed. He's flung off. And Tyrion, his horse like jumps and slips, I think. Does something that...
So Balon's horse gets stabbed in the chest, like as they're getting like right to this ship. Tyrion was too distracted with everything else. He didn't even think to slow down, so he can't like get off. And his ship just jumps onto the first ship.
His
but
horse.
His horse lands in ankle deep water, breaks its leg, and then he has to slit its throat and covers himself.
Well, he gets flung off, loses his axe.
Yeah, he flies off the horse. Yeah,
gets his dagger to kill the horse. Yeah, and then he's just back into mob mode. He's just slicing everybody up with whatever he can find: his dagger, a broken spear.
Which is more, like I said, this is more like, what the fuck is Tyrion doing?
Exactly.
He just gets up and kills this horse, like, out of nowhere. Like, he knows what needs to be done, how to do it real quick.
That makes me think of the Dany chapter. That's how they saved Drogo. They slit the horse's throat all in a bath on him, right? Read that, Kyle. He found his feet again and lurched to the rail.
And then he was fighting, staggering and splashing across crooked decks awash with water. Men came at him. Some he killed, some he wounded, and some went away. But always there were more. He lost his knife and gained a broken spear. He could not have said how. He clutched it and stabbed, shrieking curses. Men ran from him, and he ran after them, clambering up over the rail to the next ship and then the next. His two white shadows were always with him, Balon Swan and Mandan Moore, beautiful in their pale plate. Surrounded by a circle of Valyrian spearmen, they fought back to back. They made battle as graceful as a dance.
Yep. So
hung up. Valyrian, is that how you? Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
This is not mentioned very often, but it's a house. They have an island,
they were the ones that were outside the chain. Yeah.
Exactly.
No,
I think I mentioned this earlier. This is where Tyrion again. He says he's popping off, but then we hear that Mandan and Balon are right behind him. So how much are they helping? Yeah,
they're popping off.
Yeah, they're popping off for sure.
But I mean, like the whole way to here, though, he's talked about like 30 people that he's killed.
His frag count's crazy.
If I go down Tyrion's frag count, I have 3 from he cut the head off the first guy.
Yep.
He rode down an archer and he opened man from shoulder to armpit.
Okay.
Then I have 2 more later when he cuts the arm off the spearman, and then his horse kicks a guy in the thigh. I'm saying that guy's dead. You don't like. Even if his leg's broken, look at the surroundings.
He's going to die at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know if that guy is on Tyrion's list or not.
One more, the man whose head he hacked when Balon's horse died. He hacks him. When Balon's horse died, he hacked somebody in the head. And then 2 more, he says his killing here was a clumsy thing. He stabbed one in the kidney and threw another man into a river. Again, he says like he was popping off and killing people, but he's like vague about it except for those ones. Still, that gives him 6 frags in this. If we're only talking about the ones he like literally specifically talks about mentioning, that still gives him 6 frags. And Mandan gets 1 because we only see Mandan lance the first guy. It's the only like confirmed one we get from him. I say you could give him 2 more because there's a point where he says like he's killing men and breaking shields left and right. And because he says killing men, you can say he's killing at least 2.
At least 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that kind of goes against our rules. So I think we're fine with that. I mean, obviously, they're doing better than their kill count.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that
it's just kill confirmed that carries Call of Duty.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to get the dog tags. If we don't have the dog tags, it doesn't count.
So that gets to this last part, right? So,
which is going to artificially inflate our main characters because we're going to see most of theirs or hear about most of theirs directly, where these guys kind of break off and then.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. Is like we're finding who's the most exciting, who's like brings the most excitement to the chapters. Yeah.
So the ships start to break off, and then the bridge is failing.
One thing before that. A naked man fell from the sky and landed on the deck, body bursting like a melon dropped from a tower. His blood splattered through the slit of Tyrion's helm.
Joffrey.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, this is an antler man falling from the sky. And we didn't mention it, but earlier we did hear about a huge rock destroying a ship in the middle of the...
there was a rock the size of a horse.
Which means they must be using like one whore for antlermen and one whore for rocks, which is a good
they're definitely... they're still...
Yeah.
Maybe they have 3, right? 3 whores?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one's it might be like, okay, shoot some rocks. Okay, now throw an antler man. Okay, now shoot some rocks. All right, no. I want to do another antler man.
Antler man, big rocks, little rocks. Each whore has
3 different whores for different projectiles, exactly.
It's just good planning. All right, so the ships start to break. He like gets knocked off, I think. He's kind of confused. I'm not sure what happens. I don't know if he knows what happens to him, but he starts spinning.
I think to your point, little rock, like head-sized rocks come from the sky, like shortly after the body, and that's what first makes the ships fall. He falls over, and his helmet starts filling with water, so he takes that off, and then he like gets to his feet and climbs back up onto the deck. There's a big groaning noise. There was a loud crash. Everything lurched again. He slid back into the water. Now it was so steep that he couldn't stand anymore, and he had to climb out by grabbing onto a rope.
Inch by inch, he climbed.
One of the ships that he knew that they were connected to earlier, he saw like now floating downriver detached. So he knows something like big has shifted here.
Into a wall of fire too.
And he starts spinning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets extremely disoriented here.
Yeah, on one side a raging battle, on the other side the Red Keep. He's like, that doesn't make sense. They're on the wrong sides. And decides it doesn't make nothing about that makes sense. But says there's no time to think about it. His shoulder really hurts. So I think this is where the battle fever starts wearing off, right? So now he's feeling the shoulders where he got hit by the arrow.
Right.
Right.
It's absolutely where the adrenaline is starting to die.
Yeah. He's like, okay, I need to figure this out ASAP, get off this ship. Things are going bad. So, downstream, just a big wall of fire. Yep.
So we can't skip through that, right? So like, and I mean, I guess you're kind of limited probably on what you can say, but I mean, I have, I guess, 2 theories on this. One kind of goes into what we were talking about before in that, like, this is just his point of view, and he's so confused and disoriented that this isn't actually happening. Like, there isn't this weird battle happening across the, like, you know, it is right on the Red Keep.
You're pointing out the fact that Tyrion here mentions that there's fighting going on the side of the river that the Red Keep isn't on. It just doesn't make any sense because the only thing that should be over there is Stannis' army.
Yes.
What if the mountain clans were met?
Well, that was my other theory.
Okay. Mountain clans have just been waiting the entire time to strike at the opportune moment.
It is possible.
It is possible. So what was the first theory then?
Well, that Tyrion's just so disoriented that this isn't actually how it is.
Okay.
He's seeing the fighting on the side, and he's still just like in this battle fever, coming out of it, you know, losing reality.
Okay.
Guess we'll have to wait till next time to find out.
Yeah.
My notes were potentially vague about what I said there, but I'm not going to say anything.
All right, so one last big thing happens.
Before we get there, downstream, kind of like Davos chapter ends, it's just a big wall of fire. He's like, if this ship that I'm on breaks loose and I am going downstream, it's over. He's like, this is not good. I need to get moving. And someone shouted his name.
My lord.
My lord, take my hand.
He manages to reach the rail. Something slams. He almost falls again. And then...
There on the deck of the next ship, across a widening gulf of black water, stood Sir Mandon Moore, a hand extended. Yellow and green fire shone against the white of his armor, and his lobstered gauntlet was sticky with blood. But Tyrion reached for it all the same, wishing his arms were longer. It was only at the very last, as their fingers brushed across the gap, that something niggled at him. Sir Mandon was holding out his left hand. Why? Was that why he reeled backward, or did he see the sword after all? He would never know. The point slashed just beneath his eyes, and he felt its cold, hard touch and then a blaze of pain. His head spun around as if he'd been slapped. The shock of the cold water was a second slap more jolting than the first. He flailed for something to grab onto, knowing that once he went down, he was not like to come back up. Somehow, his hand found the splintered end of a broken oar. Clutching it tight as a desperate lover, he shinnied up foot by foot. His eyes were full of water, his mouth was full of blood, and his head throbbed horribly. Gods, give me strength to reach the deck. There was nothing else. Only the oar, the water, the deck. Finally, he rolled over the side and lay breathless and exhausted, flat on his back. Balls of green and orange flame crackled overhead, leaving streaks between the stars. He had a moment to think how pretty it was before Sir Mandon blocked out the view. The night was a white steel shadow, his eyes shining darkly behind his helm. Tyrion had no more strength than a rag doll. Sir Mandon put the point of his sword to the hollow of his throat and curled both hands around the hilt. And suddenly he lurched to the left, staggering into the rail. Wood split, and Sir Mandon Moore vanished with a shout and a splash. An instant later, the holes came slamming together again, so hard the deck seemed to jump. Then someone was kneeling over him. "Jamie?" he croaked, almost choking on the blood that filled his mouth. Who else would save him, if not his brother? "Be still, my lord. You're hurt bad." A boy's voice that makes no sense, thought Tyrion. It sounded almost like Pod.
Almost like Pod.
Sucks it wasn't.
Yeah, it couldn't be.
So what happens here? Does like just the boats lurch again, and that's why Mandon falls, or does Pod push him through the?
I think Pod has something to do with it, man.
So yeah. We give Pod this. That's what I'm saying. Does Pod get on the frag count here? 13-year-old Pod.
Get his ass on the frag count till we
give it to him. Why not?
Put an asterisk next to it till it's confirmed. But
well, what I would say is that Mandon definitely had armor on because he had his helmet on. So like this dude's dead.
He's drowning.
Well, it also makes it sound like as soon as he falls off, a boat slams into right where he just came from too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way.
And wood split and Sir Mandon vanished with a shout and a splash. An instant later, the hulls came slamming together again, so hard the deck seemed to jump. So it's like he fell, bang. I don't know. Yeah. I kind of take him as getting sandwiched too, but I don't know. I don't think you need that. He could just drop.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it said you heard a splash, so yeah. I'm saying he was the splash, then there was a crash, and by that point, he was either lost in the water or smashed.
So I think it was a little bit of both. So I think Mandon was definitely focused on Tyrion and didn't see Pod. So I think Pod could have potentially pushed him. But it's already this super unstable, like I think he had some things against him, and that made it easier for Pod is all.
Agree. Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And I mean, I guess because of the whole Eerie thing and what we were talking about earlier is a good reason for Mandon to be like this, but we haven't really seen anything about that. I mean, you guys, you kind of pointed out a couple earlier, but that was more of just like, yeah, he's dangerous. That's not like he's going to fucking kill you. He's going to switch sides and not be a knight anymore, or, well, not fulfill his Kingsguard duties. So yeah, I don't know what to make of it really, other than I guess, like I said, that he had some bad blood with Tyrion, had an opportunity, but he kind of screwed it up, right? I mean, this dude should have done a better job than this.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it shouldn't be very hard to
kill. Guy that was just bawling out in the battle, he only got a slice of the face off and had a chance to be...
the guy who was also bawling out, though. Tyrion was also bawling out.
Yeah, who had no strength left, who's laying, starfished on the ground.
He used his last little bit of battle fever to flinch back from the sword blow.
Well, and he was reaching out for it. Why would you even call for him? Why not just let him die on that boat?
Exactly.
I mean,
because he needed to confirm it for the frag count.
It's like a Scar moment.
I killed
the villain has the monologue kind of thing. It's I need my own vengeance. I can't just watch you die. That's not good enough.
What could make sense is Mandon's I need to get off this fucking boat that's falling apart. Tyrion's holding onto this rope. I guess you could just say, yeah, if the boat's falling apart, if I get off, I can just camp the foot of the bridge of ships, I guess, if you want.
Well, and it sounded like Mandon was on a different boat that was kind of far away.
Yeah, he's reaching across.
And Tyrion had to figure out how to get across this gap to get back to that other boat. Why even jump to Tyrion's boat?
Exactly. Tyrion's already falling off.
Yes. And then he would have seen Pod coming.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a fun chapter. Like I said, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it. I just have some issues with it.
Cool if it's true. Cool if it's in his mind.
Yeah, no.
Cool to see where we're going forward.
Yeah, and we'll find out when we're back with Sansa next chapter. Oh, wait, probably won't find out next chapter, but we'll find out eventually we'll get some more clarification on what actually happened.
More the same day continues.
Yeah,
I was just giving them updates. Maybe we'll get an update. But
I don't know. Things sound like they're about to get crazy in the wherever they are, the Queen's whatever room.
In the Queen's dining room or ballroom.
So I mean,
yeah. Well, we'll find out next time. Thanks for hanging out, Kyle. We'll see you in the next one. We'll see the rest of everybody in the spoiler section.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Later, nerds.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Bye, Kyle. See you later. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Bye, Kyle.
Now, on to the spoiler section of Tyrion 14. Nels, what's your hot take?
I have a few.
Do you?
What is this last one? Oh, yeah. Not actually that many. We can talk about Mandan stuff.
All right. Who put the hit out?
Yeah.
It sounded like Kyle thought he was acting on his own accord.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of put that in his mind by like saying that like Tyrion was kind of poking at him earlier, which he was, but and that is one of the theories that Mandan acted on his own accord. Tyrion, I didn't want to tell Kyle this after he already had that thought, but Tyrion also does kick Mandan, I think, because Mandan was the one in the riot for King's Landing. Mandan was supposed to be guarding Sansa, but he doesn't guard Sansa. Sansa gets taken, right? So then he goes, when he comes back and Tyrion's like, where's Sansa? And Mandan's there, and Sansa's not. He's like, you were supposed to protect her. What the fuck? And I think he like kicks Mandan a time or two. Yeah. So again, like he has been rude to Mandan before, but like Mandan deserved it. Most people take that as hint for somebody else. That Mandan's working for somebody else. The fact that he left Sansa during the riot of King's Landing.
Joff the Boff.
He does go to protect Joffrey there, and again, Joffrey is another one of the people.
You think it was little? You always think. Well, this will go back to you thinking that Littlefinger calls the mob to get Sansa out of there. So
yeah, and he's paying off Mandan. So we haven't seen it yet, but what we will learn about Mandan is that he came from the Vale. We already kind of know that because of Servardus, like the whole Servardus Egan thing, right? Like I mentioned with Kyle, Tyrion mentions that to him in one of the first Tyrion chapters of this book. But later, I think Tyrion literally says, "Varys, give me everything you know about Mandan Moore." And Mandan Moore says he came from the Vale, but he doesn't have many friends there. He was appointed by Jon Arryn, but neither Jon Arryn or Robert really liked him much. And that's pretty much what Varys says. So it's like, why would Jon Arryn appoint this guy if he didn't like him?
Aaron's like, oh, I really like this knight. He's great. Because Littlefinger got...
Yeah, and Lysa doesn't have a single original idea for herself. So
yeah, I mean, Lysa's like you. Preston, what's his name, is Littlefinger, and you're...
And Lysa just says, just plays it all out. Yep, sure, I'll take it. But yeah, that's the thought. The thought is Littlefinger is the one that is behind Mandan. I think a lot of people... I think this is kind of the accepted theory for like people who have thought about this a decent amount.
What would Littlefinger's big push to get rid of Tyrion be, though? Just to get rid of Lannisters, or just
because we kind of see him do it, Littlefinger try and get rid of Tyrion already, and we see him do it again.
So, all right, but here's my point, and I'm not saying it's not Littlefinger with this point, but at some point you keep killing this position, right? Unless you fulfill that position, somebody else is gonna fill that position.
I don't know what you mean.
You know what I mean? So he killed Jon the Hand. Right.
That's not what I mean. I mean, we've already seen...
Just let me finish my train of thought.
Yeah, okay.
All right, he kills Jon Arryn. All right, a new hand comes in. He kind of plays the game with that hand, has a big part of that hand dying, and now here's another hand. Like, at some point, you got to learn to play the game with the people playing, too. Like, he just keeps killing people till he figures out who he wants to play the game with. Yeah,
more what I meant was Littlefinger... He's already tried to play this game with Tyrion specifically. Like, to what you're saying, Tyrion, I feel like the reason I think Littlefinger is because Littlefinger, we know, wants to play the game with Tyrion. Like, he's kind of picked him out. He's like, I'm playing with you. He played the knife game, like telling Catelyn Stark this was Tyrion's knife. That was like anti-Tyrion. And then, again, this is up for debate, but the accepted theory is that Littlefinger and or Olenna Tyrell are behind Joffrey's death. And as part of that, they blame it on Tyrion. It definitely seems like Littlefinger is either there's something up with Tyrion. Littlefinger pays for dwarves, right? Littlefinger's the one that sends the dancing dwarves to the wedding. He's trying to stoke something there, whether it's he knows Joffrey's going to die and he wants Tyrion to have been angry at Joffrey prior to his death, so it implicates Tyrion, right?
Yeah,
so,
but okay.
There's a lot of theories. Again, it's all theories, but a lot of people think Littlefinger has basically played this game with Tyrion already. At least maybe not directly trying to kill him, but trying to screw him over before and after. The reason why that's less obvious, I feel like it becomes more obvious once Tyrion marries Sansa. Why Littlefinger would want Tyrion out of the picture, like kill Sansa's husband. That makes sense to me. Why he's playing the game with the knife earlier in book 1, and why he would do this. I don't know, but I think it's more of a maybe he doesn't have the motive, but Littlefinger is the one with the most means and opportunity based on what we know about Mandan, I guess.
Yeah, it just seems goofy because like until Tyrion really took over the hand position, or maybe really Cat drug him into the whole game, he really didn't have any care. He was drinking and whoring and reading books. You know what I mean? They kind of pulled him into the game.
That's a really good point. Like, say Cat doesn't do this with Tyrion, right? It doesn't involve him at all. Tyrion probably just goes, like, does he even come to King's Landing?
No, he's probably elsewhere. He could be anywhere. He probably back at Castle Rock. Yeah. Well, there's not even going to be a war, so, like...
If Tyrion doesn't get captured, there's no war. But I'm just thinking, Tyrion's such a non-factor if he doesn't get taken, right? Because not only... is there no war, but if there is something's going to happen in King's Landing eventually. You're just not going to have Ned and Cersei. Like, Ned's on the path to figure this information out. Whether Tyrion gets captured or not, something's going to come to a head in King's Landing, right? If Tyrion doesn't get captured,
he's just
not a character in this ever, right? He's a guy who shows up at Winterfell, goes to the wall, give Bran a saddle, and then goes and spends the rest of his life at Castle Rock. Like, he's not riding it. Once everything kicks off, he's not riding into battle. He's probably just chilling at Castle Rock like, ooh, damn, sucks for everyone out there. You know what I mean? Like, he's not like a put me in the front lines kind of guy. He's just like a wind up in the front lines kind of guy, you know? But yeah.
All right. Any other hot takes? No, nothing about Cersei killing.
So that was the last thing. Is if we're going through people who could have been behind the Mandan thing. Again, I think Littlefinger is.
So there's really three. There's three people: Littlefinger, Joffrey, or Cersei.
Or Mandan himself, and some people throw Varys in there, but there's very little reason for
maybe
Varys.
Tywin, maybe a little Tywin action.
Maybe Tywin. Some people think Varys is involved, but what Varys' involvement is the fact that he knows it was Littlefinger, but he's keeping Tyrion thinking it was Cersei, just because Varys' long game with Tyrion is make him hate his family so that he will come join Dany. So people think that Varys knows who actually did it, but lets him think it's Cersei.
Yeah, that would make sense to me.
But yeah, I'm not sure. Next thing I had, only other spoiler point was I'm gonna read the quote about like what Tyrion sees when the ships are spinning. I purposely didn't read it because I think it's kind of obvious what's happening. Not obvious, but if Kyle thought about this for a few minutes, he would know.
Something.
I think he would know it. Yeah, or especially if we read the quote and called it out to him.
Yeah. All right. I'll let you read it and.
On one side of him was a raging battle, a great confusion of bright banners waving above a sea of struggling men, shield walls forming and breaking, mounted knights cutting through the press, dust and mud and blood and smoke. On the other side, the Red Keep loomed up high on its hill, spitting fire. They were on the wrong sides, though. For a moment, Tyrion thought he was going mad, that Stannis and the castle had traded places. How could Stannis cross to the north bank? Belatedly, he realized that the deck was turning and somehow he had gotten spun about. So castle and battle had changed sides. Battle? What battle? If Stannis hasn't crossed, who is he fighting? So I think what the tell here is a great confusion of bright banners waving above a sea of struggling men, shield walls forming and breaking, mounted knights cutting through the press. Right? So this is Tywin. Mm-hmm. Actually, probably the Tyrell men.
Right.
Loras.
I didn't realize
it's actually not Loras in the books. It's his brother Garland Tyrell, who's the one. He's the one. Loras is there, but Garland is the one
wearing the armor.
Yeah, in Renly's armor.
Oh, it's not Loras wearing the armor?
No, Loras is there, but Garland is the one wearing the armor. Garland is like the best fighter. He's the one who like trains against 3 men at once.
Yeah. So do they actually attack them on the South Shore? And
I think so. Yeah, I didn't think this was true, but I think again, on this read through, I'm kind of picking up stuff I never really picked up before. I had thought that most of Stannis' army crossed to the north bank, kind of like where the tourney grounds were that we saw earlier, and that's kind of where Tywin caught him. But I think you're right.
So I think they
I'm reading a few chapters ahead, and I haven't taken notes on a few chapters ahead, but I have read to like the next Sansa chapter where like Tywin comes in and his horse shits in the hall and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think the way they describe it, I haven't taken notes, but I think the description is like Stannis split his forces. And like maybe the Tyrell men went on this side of the river, and the Tywin's men were on this side of the river, on Tyrion's side of the river.
Right. So that kind of plays to my point of if it was Tywin's men. Remember how it was like they don't have to cross at this river; they could go around it.
You could go upstream more and cross at the closest.
Like at some point, there had to be a spot where, the Tyrell maybe they were still on the left side of the river, possibly right, or the south side. And they never had to cross it.
Exactly. So it might have just been like a letters thing where they somehow communicated we're going to work together. Tywin's men were already on the north side. The Tyrell men were already on the south side. But I would agree with you that this indicates that there was some meeting between, not necessarily, but I would think that probably there was a meeting.
There was some communication.
Yeah, and they're like, you guys go this way, you guys go this way. But who knows? It might not have been that. I would fear that Tywin, if he's like just doing letters, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, you guys stay on the south side of the river and come up and hurt Stannis. Like, there's too much of a risk that they come up and join Stannis, right? These guys were potentially going to join Stannis. Like, it was a toss-up on who they were going to join, Stannis or King's Landing side.
The Lannisters,
so saying... Yeah, you guys come up on your own without any of the actual Lannister forces with you.
Yeah, they definitely sent a host.
Yeah, I feel like you'd want to meet up a little bit first, but I'm not 100% sure, right? Because this gets into the whole Littlefinger thing. Littlefinger was part of this, right? Littlefinger had gone to Bitterbridge to set up this marriage alliance.
Right.
Again, who knows how much he had to do with getting the army to... I mean, the marriage alliance is what gets the army.
I mean, once you set up the marriage alliance, then it doesn't matter. You have to kind of like, all right, this is how we're attacking. You attack south, we attack north, and let's win.
Exactly. The thing that I guess the Tyrells could have done is been like, okay, yeah, we'll do your alliance, and then, like I said, go and join Stannis instead, and let Tywin think that you're on his side for a little bit there, get a little bit surprise.
Yeah, that would be a dirty backstab.
But yeah, that was, again, spoiler section just because we know it. He doesn't. I just want to kind of call out that actual quote. I didn't read it because I didn't want to. I feel like if you actually think about it, bright banners above a sea of struggling men, shield walls forming and breaking, mounted knights cutting through the press.
Yeah.
Like, you don't describe the mountain clansmen as mounted knights. They're fucking wildlings cutting through the press type thing. There's not, you wouldn't say banners or, again, it could be Stannis' men's banners, but yeah. So the last point I had, again, not really a point. I've never paid too much attention to Balon Swan on any of my read-throughs.
Okay. I'm curious now.
I know that he goes to Dorne, right? Like, he is the one that... So Ares Oakheart goes to Dorne. He gets killed by Arya Hotah. And then they're basically like, King's Landing is like, wait, what the fuck? Where's Ares Oakheart? What's up with Marcella? We're suspect. And I think Dornish have made up some lie about like, oh, you need to send somebody else. Or for some reason they said, they send Balon, I think, with the Mountain Skull. Right. They're like, yeah, you have to send us down the Mountain Skull. So they send Balon, Swan escorting the Mountain Skull, and they like just throw all these feasts and tourneys for him on the way because they're trying to stall because Marcella's ear just got cut off and like they're just not ready and they just don't want him to be there or whatever. So they're just trying to stall. And every like Dornish house that he stops at just like throws him a huge feast for like 4 days so that to just like wiggle out more time.
He doesn't leave.
But like, again, for some reason, I kind of thought he was like a Cersei crony just because one of the first times we see him in like this book, like Tyrion's walking somewhere and Cersei is like surrounded by a bunch of people and Balon Swan is just one of the people that's like with Cersei. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, he's a Cersei crony. But Tyrion, when he gets named, he's recently been named Kingsguard, right? He was named Kingsguard with him and Osmond got named together because Preston Greenfield died and Boros Blunt failed to protect Tommen when they were trying to take Tommen out of the city, right? So those two guys are no longer Kingsguard. So now we got Osmond Kettleblack and Balon Swan protecting them or replacing them. And Tyrion thinks when Balon Swan gets like cloaked that like he's like actually like honorable. Like Tyrion's take on him is he's honorable.
He's like, oh, he's a good guy to actually fill this position.
Exactly. And then the other note I had on in Balon Swan note was he's the one when Tyrion talks to Cersei, he's like, I want the Hound and Balon Swan to lead sorties. So again, that tells you he speaks pretty high, like thinks pretty highly of this guy. If he's put him on par with the Hound,
he trusted him and believed in him to do
command, fight well, but also command, right? Like when he's thinking of who's going to command,
lead
in the Kingsgate. Mandan can't do that exactly. Like Balon can do that. So yeah, again, I always kind of thought of Balon as like a Cersei crony, but I'm starting to think maybe not. Maybe he's like actually like one of the few like good knights that we got.
I feel like I always get Balon and Boris confused because Boris ends up staying a Kingsguardman through the show, right? He's the one that goes to Bravos and Arya kills, correct?
That's Meryn Trant.
That's Meryn Trant.
It's not Meryn Trant in the books.
So I don't have a visual at all of who Balon or Boris would be from the show.
And I don't know if they're in the show. Those two those two probably aren't in the show. I mean, they're probably like cast and like, oh, this Kingsguard, but they probably don't have speaking lines or anything. I feel like Boros, you're right. At this point, Boros she stripped him of his white cloak, but I feel like he stays around. I can't actually remember anything that he does, but I'm pretty sure he stays around. But there's a point where Tyrion, again, early Storm of Swords, he's thinking about like, oh, why would Cersei send Mandan to kill me? Like, I always knew Meryn Trant and Boros Blunt were hers, but I didn't think she had and Osmond Kettleblack towards the end, but I didn't think that she had Mandan in her pocket as well. She's like, fuck, does she have all the Kingsguard? To your point, Tyrion thinks that Mandan and Boros are definitely Cersei's, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's much of something to talk about or something we'll know is, I guess he had to kind of wait for a moment to be kind of alone with Tyrion to kill him. Would anyone have really seen him kill him if it was just in the middle of the battle?
So I'm wondering, and like,
was something way more likely to see him actually slice his nose off right here and been like, dude, what the fuck were you doing? You murdered Tyrion. Like after the battle.
This seems like a pretty good place that no one would notice. Literally on like a bridge of ships that's falling apart. Everyone's worried about themselves. With
chaos going around.
To that point, the thing that like I do wonder that I think Littlefinger is a little bit of a stretch is Littlefinger hasn't been in King's Landing in forever. Like he's been gone for like 4 months, 5 months maybe, right? Because he left so long ago. Like unless he's got Dantos talking to Mandan in the Sept when he's got Dantos talking to Sansa in the Kingswood, like in the Godswood. Like, and I'm not saying it's not possible. It's very possible that he could have like have somebody talk. I mean, I guess you don't need to have somebody talking to Mandan. You just talk to him before you leave. But like, what's the command then? Like, you know what I mean? It's not like, kill Tyrion in this battle 4 months from now. It's like, kill Tyrion whenever you have a chance.
Kill Tyrion when the cleanest time shows.
Exactly. So like, has Mandan Lily been looking for a chance to kill Tyrion since Littlefinger left? And this was just the first, like, it's not even like, maybe. Oh, is this the best opportunity in the battle? Is this the best opportunity?
That's probably
in the past, like the riot. Like they were in the riot together.
It's probably something you don't put in writing, and you're not going to trust just anybody with delivering the message. So you would think that if this is his guy, this is a one-on-one deal. Like, all right, we're going to but then again, it's super far ahead planning. And how long would they have waited till?
It seems like you would have had to get a message to him after the riot. Like Littlefinger wouldn't have been able to tell far enough ahead to see what would happen after the riot, especially if we're assuming that one of the goals of the riot for Littlefinger was to get Sansa out. When that doesn't happen, you think that he must have a little check, right? Like, okay, change of plans, re-update Dantos, re-update Mandan, or whoever else I've got working for me. Again, this is all theory, but so you think he has to be in recontact. Like, it couldn't have been just Littlefinger saying something to Mandan before he left. Even though I get what you're saying, that makes the most sense, like security wise. Mm-hmm. I feel like there would have had to been like some type of message or messenger post riot.
Yeah. Or at least somebody else on their side that they trusted. Yeah. All right. That's all I have. I don't have anything else.
Yep. Me too. Cool. Short one.
All right.
Good one. We'll see you guys in the next one for Sansa 7, I think.
Bye.
Bye-bye.